Hi, everybody. Once again, this is Micah Lieberman with Scope doing a fun Voices of Scope interview. Always just talking to people doing interesting work who are in the world of clinical research. So, Dr. Mei Yang is the co founder of NouStarX, and um, she is a little bit unique, not only because you're unique, May, but because at Scope, your area of expertise, you're not falling into our more traditional tracks, patient recruitment, site selection, data management. You have a kind of a broad view. You are really into real world data, AI, clinical development, dot, 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 as those things especially relate to market access, pricing, and reimbursement. So, is that a good description?
Great description. Because I do work in all these field in the past almost 20 years. Spend most of the time in pharma, but also in the more like a CRO vendor side, working on data, AI technology, but everything fundamental in the past years to support improve efficiency of clinical trials as well as enhance the value story to support market access.
Right. Okay. So at Scope this year, which is new, Eileen Murphy, my colleague, you're working with Eileen. We have some sessions at Scope that are new this year. And we're kind of bridging between clinical and commercial, right? And we have a keynote panel related to that as well. And so I think where I want to start is if we're talking to our pharma, our biotech people, it's two different situations as far as the size, the resources, what they already have internally, like ready to go. So, when should sponsors really start thinking about, how early should market access considerations come into play? How early, when should sponsors really start integrating these decisions, or like how early? What is your experience and what is your advice?
So, in the big pharma, I think normally we would start as phase two. Of course, that means like we will go to phase three. Of course, some like oncology these could be even earlier because their phase two will serve as the pivotal trial. So we would start planning at phase two, which will we have a lot of discussion at the end of phase two, go to phase three decision making. It's not only about FDA approval, EMA approval, it's also about are we able to really sell the drug?
Hmm.
That means market access,
Yes.
pricing, reimbursements. A good regulatory approval nowadays doesn't mean you will be able to sell the drug, only if you get reimbursed. And also at the same time, it's not only a cross-functional kind of this level of integration, as we say, break the silo between commercial market access, clinical development is also thinking about globally because um, a little bit different from like regulatory bodies. The reimbursement bodies are very different. Say in the US, you have many different type of payers. You have government, you've had private, different sectors. And in the EU, you have HTA bodies. Each country has different HTA bodies. Their focus are different. So when you start to planning your phase three or pivotal trials, you really have to think about as a whole different countries, your priorities, it's all related to how you design your trial. Are you choose the right comparators in your phase
Right.
three? Are you using the right, the endpoint? Are you designing the trial following the right follow-up period? So all these need to be considered as a whole. So that's where you start to think about reimbursement, market access before you get into phase three, because that's critical for your phase three design.
So here's a question. You know, it's so obvious now, right? Like the idea,
Mhm.
oh, we're
Yeah,
going to go into multi-years of development, spending all this money, and wait a minute, we never found out the answer to the question of will we be reimbursed, right? This
exactly.
this is such a huge pitfall that my assumption is that industry understands this more now than ever because there are pricing pressures, right?
Exactly.
But at the same time, I don't want to assume anything. Has it, in your experience, because you've worked with a lot of sponsors, you've worked with small and large, Has industry as a whole gotten better at this strategic approach to market access, integrating it really early? Because there is a problem, which is this is a very general statement. Clinical is its world, commercial is its world in organizations.
Mhm.
And you really do need this kind of early discussion and kind of everybody working well together and sharing data. So in your experience, is industry gotten better at this? Do they still need to work on this a lot more because of what I just said, where they are still not integrating these discussions into their early clinical development planning enough?
I think in the big pharma, because I spent most of the time in big pharma in the early
Right.
years, I think big pharma so far, I feel they are doing a fairly good job,
Okay.
especially at the strategic level. Say I was participating all the so we have like a GPT, like global like clinical committee, global like a product committee. There is like a kind of this venue that we can share, exchange our information, share our strategy at very high level. But when we get to really execution about running a trial, I feel there is still like place need to be improved.
Okay.
Say I want to collect certain information in the trial, but the collecting form may be not designed to collect the relevant information for reimbursement. Then we have to change that form. But if we change that form, it triggers a lot of clinical operational kind of process in order to change that form. And I think there's still like space to improve in terms of efficiency or how we can change that to make this form suitable not only for clinical purpose but also for reimbursement purpose, that relevant information can be collected during the trial. And I think that's like more towarding the execution level needs improvement, but strategically I think majority
Okay.
of the big pharma are there already.
Okay, so that's a good segue then. So let's say strategically they get it.
Mhm.
They I'm using proverbial they. You know,
Mhm.
so now we get into the details. Every organization is different. So
Exactly.
you mentioned execution. So what are some of the you could position it as here's what I've seen, like some of the common, I don't want to call them mistakes, but maybe they are mistakes because they end up wasting time and wasting money.
Uh-huh.
So do you have advice or let's get into the how, the execution. Strategy is straight. What have you seen? What advice do you have? What are some of the common mistakes? Like, what do you want to tell everybody out there in the world who's listening to this and this is what they do?
So I think I would suggest that clinical operation could be more involved in this higher level of discussion with strategically with the clinicians and the market access people. Because when I was in a conversation with clinicians, I think they're really on board. But to get to the execution level, as I just mentioned, say these forms need to be updated, the consent form need to be released. At the same time as they release the initial protocol, but a lot of time, all these nitty-gritty details kind of drag the process to be got delayed. We have to amend the protocol in order to incorporate all this information. Then it got delayed. So at the very beginning, when you're planning, I would hope that clinical operation can be more involved, that we have direct communication with them, then the every single detail or every single steps could be think ahead rather than later on we have to do amendments,
Yeah.
things like
Right.
that.
Remember,
Yeah.
by the way, I'm kind of laughing because what you're saying is what we've been saying at Scope. We're like, hey, often it's the clinical operations people raising their hand and they're saying, I'm here, talk to me earlier. Like I could tell you that where this is not going to work, how it's going to be a problem. So sometimes organizationally, it has to do with, maybe a culture or leadership of like, we actually have those voices in the room to avoid these kind of mistakes, which waste time. And amendments are extremely expensive and nobody wants them. So, yeah, I was just laughing when you're like, yeah, maybe it's good to have those ClinOps people in the room. Everybody at Scope is like, yes, please have me in the room. So yes, you preach into the choir there. That's good. All right.
Yes, yes.
Um, so I'll see you very soon. We have at Scope as one of our tracks, market access, pricing, and reimbursement. And the tagline is where clinical strategy meets commercial success. And I just love that we're doing this. Mei, thanks for having this discussion. And I think it's going to be a great set of discussions on site around this topic. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.